Hello, and welcome to today's Coppice Dev stream. For those of you who haven't been here before, I am Martin. I run a small software company called M-Cubed Software, and I've been developing for Apple's platforms for about 17 years now. And when I'm not spending my time doing contract work, I'm working on my indie app for the Mac called Coppice, an app that lets you collect all your thoughts and ideas, link them together, and arrange them on an infinitely expanding canvas. And what we are working on is the next version of Coppice, which is focused primarily on adding extra functionality for image pages. So we have so far added the ability to rotate images, to crop images, and we have just started on working on image linking, so allowing you to draw hotspots on an image and link to other pages. So where we left off on Saturday is we had spent the stream trying to work out how exactly to store all these hotspots. So the hotspots we have here, for example, you'd have an image, you'd be able to draw, for example, a rectangle over it, or maybe an oval, or maybe just a polygon of just any set of straight lines with points. So we had worked out how we are going to store that in the document, which is going to be as an array of points. And we'd got that basic type laid out as an image hotspot and got ready to start on some last tidying up of it before starting on some UI work, which should hopefully be more interesting. But first, I want to just write a few unit tests. It won't be the full set of unit tests, but just enough to make sure that this code actually works as I expect. So we're going to be doing some of the best cases. So while I get started on that, for anyone who's watching, let me know how you are in the chat. Let me know what you are up to today, if you're just following along to see how an app is developed, if you are working on your own projects, and what you're working on. And as always, if you have any questions, just let me know and I'll try to answer them, be that about what I'm working on, just general software development questions, questions about Coppice, or anything else. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is, well, the very first thing is we're going to make this a struct rather than a class. Now the reason for doing that, this is something that I decided at the very end of the last stream. So part of the problem is that for undo to work, I need to be able to reset value of a property, which works great if it's something like the crop rect that we added, where that is just a secret rect. The problem is that this property is going to end up being an array of these image hotspots. So if we had this be a class, as I initially thought, you'd be able to change stuff like the link or the points on the actual image hotspot without having to update the image page content. Now we could potentially make that work because page content does that itself, where it sort of hooks up to the pages undo manager, and we have changes here. The problem is that is a bit easier to do because a page has a single content item. Whereas here we will have multiple image hotspots. So by converting this to a struct, I'm basically forcing myself in code to say I've got to create a new version and replace the existing instance. So that should work reasonably well. So we'll see how that goes. But it does mean that I can have a single property that is an array of all these image hotspots, and when you undo redo, I'm basically undoing that entire array. It does mean that there's a little bit more data stored on the clipboard rather than just like change, like saying add a point, remove a point, or change links or whatever. It is just swapping out an entire property, but that is something that we can. That's something that we can get away with. It's a little bit of data, but there's more than enough RAM on people's machines. It does mean that there is potentially, when you undo, I have to redo all of the hotspots. But again, we can get away with that with some clever stuff where we just check whether things have actually changed before we go about updating the UI and creating new views and so on. So we can get away with quite a lot. So this just simplifies things a lot here. So now that that is a struct, we're going to write ourselves a few unit tests. This is just to test our dictionary representation, because these are what are going to be stored to disk. So what we want to make sure is that we have unit tests just to test those. We're going to then add it to the image content and make sure that that saves it correctly, includes the image hotspots. And once all that is done, and we know that it is saving and restoring from disk correctly, we may throw a few in just to test, undo, redo. Then we can get started on our UI. But this is where unit tests become a really powerful tool. Beyond just making sure that things aren't broken, they also help you make sure that your code is working before you've had a chance to build the UI for it, while building from the model upward. So the dictionary representation is a lot easier because we'll just initialize and we're just checking have values. So all in Coppice Core. Now Coppice Core is my framework where all of my core functionality is in. Eventually it will be completely platform agnostic, so it shouldn't rely on AppKit at all. The idea there is that I can potentially then take that and bring that to iOS a lot easier at some point in the future. Have our we'll create our hotspot. do point.dictionary. So if I bring it over, eyes. Correctly, then I do that by dictionary represent. Okay, we'll use the dictionary representation because that can fail, which means that if it is set incorrectly, then throw error rather than an string point map to. And for anyone who hasn't seen this in Swift, it's a nice little shortcut. Rather than having to do something like this, where you do map 0 dictionary representation, what you can do is pass in a key path and it will map on that key path. Same for filter if it's a property that has a boolean output, or pretty much any of these sort of collection functions will accept a key path, which this basically just gets us all the dictionary representations of the points. So here we'll point hopefully FCF diction. About the cat. We'll delete. Okay. That seems compiled. Now, image hotspot with dictionary representation. No, we don't want to do that. Do hotspot. Okay. You have to. You've got to add to the. Anyway, want to make them public. Alright, so we create our image hotspot and oval 4 points. that should points we need, and then we can get our ball. String be oval. Point as ray of so I X X is 20, Y is oh, children run. Ah, public. Okay, so we fail. Question is, why do we fail? Point should be there. Point. Okay. As bit at any. Oh. Alright, so build and reel again. and our test now passes. So we can do the same again over here for the link. Create our hotspot. That don't need any points because we're not actually testing that. But the URL yes, coppiceapp.com, where you can actually download Coppice for free if you want to try it out on any Mac running macOS 10.15 or higher. Got to get the advert in, even though you're seeing Coppice being developed. Hopefully, if you're interested in it, you've already downloaded it by now and checked it out. So what we're going to do here is set equal hotspot. Nope. Yeah, hotspot.dictionary representation link URL is URL s both of those now both pass. So they do. So those are the simple ones. Next we want to add some tests for our initializer. And we're only going to add one for now, but we will add some stubs for the others. The one that we're going to implement is patient. Actually, we probably want 3 to do the. So do that, and we're going to slice it. Not. The others we want to. So we want found if row attribute not found and again. Type correctly today. Close attribute not found if points point actually that should probably say if at a point have them is Actually, let's do. So these bottom ones we're going to ignore for now because we're going to be assuming the good case. So I'll leave those in and leave those failing so that I can fix them later. We don't need to do everything. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to create our dictionary. Any kind to polygon points dictionaries. That and what we that hotspot. Equal image hotspot. I'm going to pass our dictionary representation in. I'm just going to call try because what you can do with XE test methods, just mark them as throws, and if something throws, it will automatically fail the test for you. So for these ones down here where we want to actually get the attribute, we will do a do catch. But for things where you don't want to do that, you just want, like, if it throws, it's failed, and you don't particularly care about the particular error that's come out, then you can just do it this way and just do try, and it works really well. It's a lot better. I mean, I've created my own snippet. So if I search for test, so this is the default Apple test. No, this one is the default Apple test method, which just function test with the name and some statements in there. I have my own where it's test and the name, where it throws, and it already has an XCT failing. Because what I like to do is stuff like this, where I write out all the tests and all the test names, and then I start filling them in bit by bit. For me, that is, it helps me think about the cases a lot better and what needs testing. So I can think about, okay, I want to get it doing all these things, and then I'll write out the actual tests. So get the hotspot, and then what we want to do is assert equal hotspot dot kind is dot polygon. Dot points is 5. Okay, so that one should pass. This will just see off throw. Yeah. here we are going to start link. S T L C. That the link is well. Probably down here as well. Let's just force unwrap. Yes, force unwrapping you probably shouldn't do, but I mean technically these should never fail, and if they fail we want to be very aware of them, because that generally means that Apple has screwed up, because these are valid URLs, and if they ever stop being valid URLs, well, that's Apple's mess up. So now that all those are done, if we build and run this, we should hopefully see those pass and the rest fail. Oh yeah, if it's been decoded it would already be a URL. There we go. So all the tests we care about are passing. Now we can go to our image page content. What we want to do is we can't do have to use combine here. Can I use combine in places? So I've been using key value observing a lot because key value observing is a lot better than combine at letting you set up properties that depend on other properties. So if you observe one property, it will also end up observing all the properties that that first property depends on. What I might end up having to be able to keep that is actually make image hotspot a class, but I can give it semantics of a struct by just making all of its properties let. Object, and we should be able to do actually wonder if that would work, because it's technically an array of them. Let's see. Probably won't, but... yeah, allow it. So we'll set that to class object. Connect these. Let. That is now building. So we got our quality and we do this here. And in image hotspots, we're going to call our did change method, and what that will do is register everything for undo and for any observations and so on. Dictionary. Oh, I'm going. Hopefully that. Oh. Oh. Problem with adding error. Problem here is that same method initialize from this memory, and the on disk one should be failable, but the memory one should not. This problem, go to page content here, create content, problem, you want it to be failable in some circumstances, but not failable in others. Oh. So I could do init from model file, which is a failable one. Then just init with data, where we don't have any metadata. That could work. If we get errors in the correct place. So we're creating with data and metadata. Now we're creating content. Okay, so we will do that. This helps get us to the point where we can have a failable initializer and a non-failable one, which is where we want, because whenever you're creating them in the app, the initializer can't fail. Of course, this is going to break all the unit tests, but we can do that. Can create that our public content model file which can't be no. This one is throws. Where's this one? Not. Not going to set metadata because you never need to set metadata. When you're creating your memory, you set it up and there's always default metadata set. So here we're going to self. Variable. Other than that, create our content. Page. We are going to. That's creating content with. This is going to file content. Probably read file. Create content. Okay, so that places up. Content is like so we just these. So in this case, the model file. Self, yeah, not in it. That may, but that's perfectly fine because this is not any sort of protocol, so it can be a convenience method for text page, but for image page, it won't be a very different things. So this effectively becomes our model file. The model file.data file metadata. Don't want that because it's not a. Okay, we'll change that. Else. Also, that should. Those description can be nil. hotspots is there. That should work correctly. Those. Don't want the metadata option then. Yeah. Metadata. There. Now to the model file. That. Done. And it fits. Of course it fits. Why on earth are we failing? Has to be. Get rid of it. Okay, can call through. Oh. That. That's a building. Hopefully it works, and it does. Okay. Let's see how broken our unit is. We had 4 failures before, which are 4 that we have created. Now we have 24 compiler errors. Okay. Guess this is going to be largely a unit testing stream. Let model file. No, we don't care about the file name, we care about the we're going to copy and paste a bunch of it. L Copy and paste. Model file. Fix a bunch of our compiler errors. Okay, that has fixed a grand total of 0 of our compiler errors. Oh. Right, on all. So we have working F. So over to here. Text. Next page content with file. Yeah. Model file. That should hopefully make this work. It's building. Let's see how many tests fail. Should just be 4, I would hope. And it is. So everything's still working. Great. hotspots, and we can actually, so now have it loading the hotspots. We save the hotspots. Data. Hotspots. Now save them. So let's go back to our unit test over here. Model file method. Right. Data contains not correct are hotspots. Here we are. That's hotspots. Hotspot dictionary. So again, we're just going to do these positive cases now, and we'll sort out the rest later. So if we do let model file equal data metadata the hotspots array kind rectangle point oval link. And model file. Search equal content.hotspots equal. So hopefully this test should. This one works. So check that the metadata. Yeah. And image page content. Got hotspots. Yeah, let hotspot speed. Ah, model file metadata. Hotspot as any. Ah. Hotspots. Use XT app hotspot. Polygon. Oval. Get our points as double. That. Finally, XCT. L. On link. Hotspot link. Hotspot 2 equal link L is L. Room our test. That's it. Hey. So I do have any sort of not going to have much in the way of undo testing for any of it. Yeah, I may need to do that at some point, but for now we will call that. So, where we are at. but okay. So now all those tests are done, we actually have a model that we can potentially start using. So now, as we're about halfway through the stream and we've reached that point, now will be a good time to take a quick break. So we're going to take a 5-minute break. So feel free to go make yourself a drink, have a bit of a stretch, and we'll be back to start working on some of the UI. So I will see you all in about 5 minutes. Welcome back. We are going to get straight back into working on the next version of Coppice. And we have thankfully finished up most of the model side of things. That should hopefully be working, we will see. But now we're going to start working on the UI side of image hotspots. Now, this may not actually go straight into doing the full UI editor. I'm going to try and decide what to work on first. May create the basic structure, but we will want our view model set up first, probably. What we might do is maybe do some more unit tests there. Build it up that way so that we confirm it all works, but actually playing it in the editor. Because how this is going to be rendered to the UI is going to be different. The image hotspots that we have just created. So test. So this class here is not actually going to be rendered to the UI, and this is where the whole view model system is actually incredibly useful, because in terms of the UI, we want to vend different types for rectangle and oval and for just a regular polygon. The reason for this is that if you have a polygon, you can actually drag any corner of that polygon and it will just move that single point. If you are actually dealing with a rectangle or an oval and you drag it, it's going to keep it a rectangular shape. So all the oval is it's drawing an oval inside the rectangle, and the rectangle is drawing a rectangle inside of a rectangle. When you drag one point of it, you're effectively moving 2 or 3 of the 4 points. So what we need to do is have those vended as different things, and we need different levels of validation. For a polygon, we need to make sure that the points are inside of the image. Whereas for a rectangle or an oval, we need to make sure that the points make up a rectangle. And there are ways that we can recover from that. But basically we need to do some additional validation. Now, the reason we're not doing this in the model layer is the model layer is where I think of it is almost like syntactically correct. It only cares like, is this correct in terms of the data is there and it is in the correct format. It's primarily for reading to disk and pulling stuff out. In terms of keeping things semantically correct and make sure like the actual values are correct, that is a higher level thing. And that is what the view model is going to validate that data, try and recover that data if it is corrupted somehow, and then vend it to the UI in a way that the UI can use it. Then the UI is going to write it back to the view model, and the view model is then going to write it to the actual data model. The view model is also going to respond to changes to the data model, because the data model is where undo redo happens, so it needs to handle all that and make sure things are juggled correctly. With the view model, it also needs to potentially want a bit more abstract, because you need to convert to these data types for both editing and or reading, because these are going to display in view mode, and when you click on one of them, you are going to be taken, like, activate the link. But when you are in edit mode, you need to be able to select those items, and you need to be able to set a link on those items. So maybe we want some class that it does the conversion to and from image hotspot into the types that are used. And then the view models for the image editor for viewing and for the hotspot editor are going to handle other sorts of changes. Yeah, I think that does make the most sense. Where we start pondering things. A bit of the stream that probably isn't, depending on what you enjoy, probably isn't the most interesting, may be the most interesting, where I'm just sat around going a lot and throwing out many ideas and pondering through the consequences. Yeah, I think having something that is self-contained and converts from the image hotspot type to what is used, and having the separate view models handle how those are utilized makes more sense. Because it helps self-contain everything. So we have like an image hotspot collection, maybe. Because then you give it content, it could observe the hotspot's property. Yeah. Okay. So let's build and run. And get our actual hotspot set up.
Distant silhouettes, empty horizon. Sing a still duet, affections tighten. Kindred ribbons bring us from our tether. Rivers drifting vivid and together. Stay by my side.
Oh, have an image. Hotspot editor, and it looks identical. Slightly. That may be something to look at later. So, go into your page. Are we actually creating? Model. Okay, so set the mode, but we're not actually. Yeah, so we're not actually using our hotspot view controller. What we'll What would be right? This sample dot. Let's shift it up. Hi, Steve. Oh, a new SSD. So is this a new primary SSD for your Mac, or is this for your gaming PC, or what's this used for? Ah, your last spinning disk. Yeah, it's good to get rid of all the spinning disks. My PC only has an NVMe drive in it, but I still have a few spinning disks for my Mac. In fact, I think one of the hard disks is in storage and the other one is just a time machine backup. And I think when I eventually get a new Mac, I'm going to go all SSD because my bootable backups are SSDs, and they're probably going to go in my gaming PC when I get a new Mac. So I'll need bigger ones because I'm getting a bigger built-in storage. So hopefully, if it is a Mac Pro and it has all the it has the ability to expand the storage in it, I may go for like NVMe for like as much as I can and stick it all inside, so have a time machine and extra storage and stuff all NVMe built in. So that would be fun if I can pull it off. Yeah, hard disks, I mean, they're still useful if you're using them for like archival storage, but they are a pain, and especially when macOS, when a hard disk isn't spun up and you open a save panel, and it feels like it has to mount every single drive connected to the system and spin every drive up, even if you're never going to use it. And then you remember just how long it takes a hard disk to get up to speed. So it would be nice to eventually get rid of that and go fully SSD. Oh yeah, even going from PCI to SATA SSD is a huge jump. I mean, it was a huge jump for me when I was trying to install beta OSs onto a partition on my time machine, because I've got a 3 terabyte hard disk for time machine. So I thought I'll partition a bit there, stick a beta version of macOS on, because that drive's always plugged in and that's going to be fine. And then remembering just how slow modern macOS is when you're booted from a hard disk, I ended up getting an external SSD, putting it in an enclosure and just doing it over USB 3. And even that is a massive, massive like speed increase. Well, I think the the iMac SKU was a Fusion drive, and macOS does run okay from a Fusion drive, but that's mostly because it can cache most of the OS on the actual SSD part of it. And I think over time they increased the size of the SSD cache part. But yeah, I mean, that iMac SKU was weird anyway, because it was also the only non-Retina display that they sold. So that was a bit confusing for them to sell. But they've got rid of it now, and now the base iMac is currently more powerful than the high-end iMac. The coding's going fairly well. I've spent some time updating the data model and written the unit test, so that should all be saving and loading all our hotspots, and I'm now moving on to actually doing some UI stuff and working out exactly how I'm going to structure this. So what I think I'm going to do is, because I have this I have an image hotspot type here, which I store the kind, whether it's a rectangle, oval or polygon, I store the point, I store the link. Because I don't want the UI to use this directly, because I need to do additional validation and rectangles and ovals need to be handled differently and so on, what I think I've decided, because I need to use this in both the view and the hotspot editors, I'm going to create something that is basically like an image hotspot collection, which is going to take the image content, observe the hotspot's property, and whenever this changes, for example undo, redo, or reverting from disk or whatever, it is going to update itself. It's going to convert these image hotspots into versions that can actually be used by the view. So it's going to be like part of it that then the view models can deal with to actually do things such as adding hotspots, invoking hotspots, and so on. I am realizing though that I haven't actually created new models for these. So maybe this hotspot collection will effectively become the view model. Because I mean, what do I need to do? Need to vend all these types that are going to have the Rex. I'm probably going to have the Bezier paths, the drawing. I need to be able to move a point on one of these things. Need to be able to select them. It's almost like an ancillary view model in a sense. We've got the view model for the image editor, but there's going to be an additional view model that is specifically just for our image hotspots. And we just have a toggle on it that enables and disables editing. I think that is how this is going to best work. So let's create this and start sketching out. Call it an image hotspot. No, controller's a bit too generic. Yeah, image editor, hotspot. Here's a hotspot collection. So what are you up to besides migrating your SSD, Steve? Are you doing anything yourself? Or is it purely focusing on this migration? Alright, so we're gonna have Vision Bezier path. We're going to have a Bezier path that is what is shown, one that is what is used for because what I'm planning on doing is this is going to be like an abstract base class, and then there are going to be types for rectangle, for oval, and for polygon. They will handle any sort of editing stuff. So the visual Bezier path is always going to be the same for the rectangle and the polygon, but for the oval they're going to be different. But honestly, I think I could just do that on the oval because we only care about that special case. So if I just do Bezier path, this is just the path, and this can be used for determining if where it was clicked. Yeah, I think this will work. May end up making this a protocol. I tried to avoid protocols, but may end up just being a bit simpler. In this case, I don't have to have these default values. So you're going to return the Bezier path, you're going to return image hotspot so we can save back. I want to reference back to the collection. Bezier path for that would probably want array of editing handle. Because we could have a function. So I want a way to determine the drag handles, because I think I can do this in a way that is fairly generic because in all cases, from the point of the view, when the user clicks, I need to know, is there a hotspot under it? Because when they click and then they mouse up, if we're in edit mode, it's going to select. If we are in view mode, it's going to activate the link. So when you click on the hotspot, I basically want to be able to hit test a hotspot and say, okay, you've clicked on this hotspot, I am going to invoke some action. But then when you're in edit mode, there are also going to be drag handles. So if you click on one of the drag handles, I want really the rectangle for those. And these probably need to be in image coordinate space. And when you drag on one, I search for and find, is there a I found the first hotspot that has a handle there. And then I want to start dragging that handle. And then if I can just, as I move, I start drag at point, point. So I can do it straight through, call for start drag, and if it's false, then I go to the next one, I go to the next one until something returns true. At which point this has started drag at a point because you have clicked on a clicked on the drag handle. So this can, each thing can store drag handle that is being moved. Then it can func drag handle move active drag point. Func it. Then move active drag, move it around, and mouse up, we will commit that drag. And I think what this allows us to do is have a generic thing where you can get one of these image editor hotspots and the view just goes, is there a point here? Okay. On mouse that, I'm going to do that. Oh, Ekreen, thanks for the follow. You are actually the first person to test out my new alerts that now appear down the bottom when people follow and subscribe. So thank you for the follow and thank you for helping me beta test that. So I think what I'm going to... Yeah, so what happens here is I can have a generic thing where the view can just on mouse down, iterate through these things, and when it returns true, it will start a drag. Then on mouse drag, it can move the active drag point, and then it can commit drag. And all of the validation and everything will happen in the actual implementation of these hotspots. So how are you today, Ekreen? Welcome to the channel, and what are you up to today? Oh, I'm quite good, thanks. Slowly puzzling through. I'm at that point of developing a feature where you're still trying to find out the best way to actually implement all of this. The point where you're mostly staring at the screen and fleshing out, as I am doing here, what the API can look like. But glad you managed to find me through Dave Voer's newsletter. I was quite happy that he linked my blog post on streaming there, so hopefully you enjoyed the stream and get some use out of it. Feel free to ask any questions about what I'm doing or Mac development or anything along those lines, and I'd be happy to answer them for you. What I'm thinking of for this start drag is this actually really be just a drag, because the thing is, I suppose I could. Yeah, this needs to be a mouse up, because the three things that can happen. So you can mouse down on the point, and that could either potentially start a drag, start a move, because you can just click in the center and drag, or it could invoke a select. And it all depends on what happens between the mouse up, mouse down, and the mouse up. So I think I could leave it as the drag. So you start drag, move the actual drag, you commit the drag. I always start a drag, I always commit a drag. But if you start a drag and you commit a drag without moving, then we just invoke the action. So, and I want to return some sort of enum here that says what has actually occurred, because I don't want to just do mouse up, mouse dragged, and mouse down, mouse dragged, and mouse up here, because they're a bit too one-to-one mapping. And the thing is, I could potentially reuse this on iOS, and I've tried to avoid mouse where possible. You're gonna click, start, and commit. I'm going to do that in the middle where you're going to move. You're going to do that on a point where click, drag in the middle, where you can drag a point. Oh, yes, Steve. I know NS Bezier Path isn't portable, but for stuff like that, I'm planning on writing wrappers anyway. So I'm just using a Bezier Path as is now. But it's like some of my data model uses NS Image and NS Color. So I'm eventually, when I start bringing it to iOS, I'm going to make it portable by writing wrappers that just image, color, Bezier path, and so on. Because you can port them fairly easy, it's just NS Bezier path is UI Bezier path. And it wouldn't surprise me if they're primarily the same code running behind NS Bezier path and UI Bezier path. It's just they've changed the prefix on them. Okay. Oh yeah, I had forgotten that UI Bezier path wasn't available all the way back then. Because if I remember correctly, most people were using a wrapper. Like there were some open source wrappers that people were using anyway. So it's like, oh, this is too slow for mobile. Developers just shrug their shoulders and say, well, we're going to make our own Objective-C version. What I find amusing about the idea, we can't give you UI Bezier path because it's too slow for mobile, is that the iPhone was faster than the machines that originally ran NS Bezier path. This is what is rather amusing is that people forget that, oh, we can't give you this from AppKit because the iPhone isn't powerful enough. And it's like, the iPhone's, like the original iPhone wasn't that much less powerful than the iMac G3 and was way more powerful than the stuff that AppKit was written on. AppKit was written on stuff that today, like, you wouldn't even call it a potato. Potatoes, like modern potatoes, are more powerful than the machines a lot of this code was originally designed to run on. And of course, that is for both good and bad, because you have certain things that exist in AppKit, such as NSCell, which largely came about of trying to optimize running on those machines, but we simply do not need them anymore. But for legacy reasons, they have to continue. Thankfully, they're mostly going now where you can avoid NSCell for a huge number of things, and when you do have to use it, it's not as bad as it used to be. But yeah, it's pros and cons. So let's get back to this. I think I'm going to keep the start drag, move back to drag and commit drag, because they're all going to be okay. And I can just have a select hotspot. Ooh, that's an interesting point. So this is going to work for editing, but what about actually constructing a brand new image editor hotspot? So when you are in rectangle or oval mode, you're basically going to, if I use the marquee tool, basically just going to click and drag. So you're going to be able to click down and drag out, and it's going to move that. So you could have it when you click in an empty space. We create one of these. We start to drag. You'd move, drag. So you'd have this here, click, and you'd drag. But for if you are doing it point by point, you'd sort of click, and in fact, let's just brush. Actually, no, we could probably just use the vector tool. You click, and then what I probably have is once you've clicked, as you hover the mouse over, it's going to show the line between that point. So then you click again, and it's going to show the line, and again, and then again. Yeah, so constructing is going to have to be different, I think. It'd be nice if I could create a way to actually because also thinking about on iPad, we won't be able to have the hover. Oh, you ought to be using the mouse and trackpad, but I would on here, if you click and drag, that does a full drawing a curve. I'm not going to allow curves. It's just going to be straight edged polygons. So what I can do is when you click and drag, is that it will place the point down and you can move it around just as though as you were hovering. So that will work on Mac, but when it comes to iPad, you can do it where you can do that sort of press and drag to get the exact position that you want everything to sit in. So I think that would actually work pretty well. So I think what I'm going to do is something that I have done. I think I may have actually named a mouse thing. which is a mouse. Oh no, down event, dragged event, up event. I do a down event at a location, dragged event at a location, and up event at a location. If I do down event at point, dragged event at point, up event at point, because probably also want a moved event. Point. Yeah, because then I could completely abstract this. So you create these as a rectangle, as a oval, or as a polygon, and then you have the Bezier path that you use to draw, and yeah, you use the Bezier path that you use to draw. You have a Bezier path that you... Ooh, that's a fair point. I wonder if these could draw themselves. They have graphics context. Nah, that's probably being best left to the view, because then the view... So, can I have the Bezier path for the actual hotspot itself? You could have a bounding Bezier path, which is where it will draw the editing stuff on. And then we could have an array of areas where the draw handles are. So you get all the components, they're completely abstracted away, and everything just goes and gets drawn there. And then the view also goes through and does the events, and it will do the down event, and if it actually selects something, then I will actually have to be right back 2 seconds. So I will be back very quickly. In fact, I'll leave this screen up. Okay, I'm back. Let's see, what if instead of plotting a polygon point by point, it by default puts down a rectangle 8 control points and lets you add, remove points or drag them around. Saves having 2 modes, one for creation, the other for editing. That is a possibility, but I think I don't necessarily need 2 modes per se. I can treat them as sort of the same thing. So for the purposes of like creating a rectangle or an oval, those two effectively treated the same. You click at a point, and when you start dragging, I will create an image editor hotspot of the correct point, and I can initialize it so that it is already dragging, and it's got the bounds that will be just like a small rectangle at this point, and it is dragging the bottom right point, and then I just start sending the dragged events and stuff as usual. So that's a very simple thing. The big different one is the polygon, and for the polygon, that will be a thing of, rather than clicking and dragging, you just click and mouse up. And when you do that on an empty space, it will create the first point. And what this needs to do is basically return control point, and then respond to the mouse move to draw the line, because it will be drawing the Bezier path, drawing the line, and then you will have a click again, and it will move around. Click again, it will move around. So as you mouse up and down, it adds points. So there is a different mode for the polygon one, which is until it is a complete Bezier path. You can't drag the existing points. Or maybe you can. Don't see why there's a reason to disallow that. But until you go around and you click to close it, or maybe you could have double click and that auto closes as well. But either way, until you close it, whenever you click, you are adding a point. I don't want to start adding all sorts of things where you can add points to existing polygons and remove points from polygons and stuff, but you just be able to move points around. And if you want to add or remove points, you just create the polygon again. I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. So I think just having it where you have a thing where you click, and it has a creation mode where you're just clicking points, and then once you're in there, like clicking no longer creates new points if you are clicking inside that polygon. I think that works. Oh yeah. I think I may need to thinking about this off stream as well, but let's see how much more we can get done. Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to convert this to so we want that, want editing bound path. Let's do hotspot path. For editing. That. Because the thing is, when you create the collection and it's not in edit mode, we just don't return any editing handle recs. And most of this stuff does nothing. So for the image hotspot. That lets us get the hotspot. Get set on there. So we've got stuff for drawing and action. Because for the down event, we can just have the view basically go through for a point where it's trying to find what am I like. Is there anything under this point? We just have it look through the hotspot paths and see if click is in there. Actually, no, it has to be inside the editing. Look at the hotspot path, editing bounds, and handle. The editing handle recs, because the editing handle recs actually extend a bit outside. So test that point. Let's just add a hit test thing because then it can check the appropriate path and editing recs. Because when you're in view mode, you just want to check the hotspot path. When you're in edit mode, you want a combination of the editing bounds and the handle recs. So if you click and you're on any of those, then we will turn true, at which point we know that we can send the events. So for creation, I think I'm going to leave that to the actual implementation. Because we're going to effectively have a class, image editor, rectangle. Which spot class image. And it may be that rectangle and oval I create a base class for those because the general interaction is the same. The only major difference is going to be the actual hotspot path. So maybe there is only one thing here and there is just a drawing mode for it, where the drawing mode just changes what the hotspot path is and everything else is the same. So actually that makes by far the most sense because they're basically the exact same type in terms of everything except for how it is drawn. You can have a rectangle one, you can have a polygon one. Then the rectangle one, in theory, you could draw anything in there. You could have like a custom shape and it's just a rectangle that draws a custom shape. So it's two different interaction modes. So, go to rectangle hotspot. So I don't think a polygon hotspot is like essential, but I mean the polygon hotspot and the oval hotspot are both going to be Coppice Pro features. So the free version is just going to have rectangles, and polygon and oval are going to be pro features. And I think polygon is useful to have. You could argue almost more useful than oval. The main reason I'm adding oval is that it's going to be, once you have rectangle, oval is easy to add. So I think polygon is going to be a useful pro feature because it gives you that much more flexibility. And to be completely frank, the other reason is I think it's going to be fun to implement. Like, I can see myself using the feature, but I also want to actually try implementing it and see what it's like implementing something like this. Visually, it is a fun feature to show off. I mean, with Coppice, a lot of the stuff I've worked on so far in terms of improvements since the initial release hasn't really been a huge amount of visual stuff. Like, there have been visual improvements, but a lot of it has been stuff where you can maybe have a screenshot and show it, but there haven't been sort of pretty things that you can show off that work really well in like video and other marketing materials. So stuff like cropping, that UI, I've been able to do a lot of custom stuff. I think it looks really good, and so that's something that's really good to show off. And I think the hotspot, especially with polygons, is something that is also going to be a good marketing feature. When it's a good marketing feature and a good and it's a pro feature, that works well because then hopefully it gets people to upgrade to pro. So that's the element of it. I mean, I know I could just do rectangles and then have different shapes inside. But I mean, if I think of something like this, I could do a rectangle and do a rectangle and then rectangles over this. But let's say I wanted the Coppice logo. Well, I could just draw a rectangle over it, but what I want to do is I want to do in like have that be a hotspot. And it's even more when you start getting onto stuff like, what if you have a map? Well, what I can have is I could just do something over a word here, but I could do a polygon over the map. Now, again, I could do it where you do all the curves and stuff, but that makes it more complex to interact with. It requires the user to think about a lot more. If I was doing like full curved Bezier paths, if it's just a polygon where you just click, 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 and you're doing straight edges, it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, it gives a lot more power. So it's one of those things of people won't probably use it all the time, but when it is useful, it is like such a leap up. So I think that is it's something that I really want to have in, if only for my own use and for my enjoyment of developing it. We're going to init with that's we need okay, case rectangle, case oval. We're going to init with a shape. Point. You're gonna have a shape, you're gonna have point. Probably does make sense for these to have the URL just for purposes of when we regenerate, because you're going to get a whole new array of image hotspots whenever you undo, redo, or anything like that. URL almost becomes a bit of an identifier at that point. So it helps deduplicate things because we can check URL with the points and the shape. Got enough stuff that we should be able to tell whether two things are equal, but the URL is useful to have actually on this thing. Because then we have all the information we need to recreate an image hotspot. What we also probably need So the problem here is that we want to initialize. That's going to get our validation. So this is the thing where if the data is invalid, for example, something has been moved outside of an image, or like basically something was incorrect, and we can try and save this, but we want to warn that something has changed. Maybe we want to do some validation. Let's leave that for now. We're not going to do any validation for now. That can be something that we tackle completely separately. So, you initialize the shape with points and a URL. Hotspot. False, because if this is true, then we can initialize with the first point. Correct. Rather than passing the points in, because what we're probably going to do is have some pre-validation when we do the validation, so we can have a method that basically takes the points and returns the rect that we're going to use, but also can throw if there's, or rather it can return like a message or something if there is. So is new hotspot. So when it's true, we use the origin of the rect as the actual down event point, and then we just do all dragged events related from there, and everything should work perfectly. He says, for here, we are going to just init with, these are going to just be an array of points. URL nil is new hotspot. Because then we are going to have a bar the oh false well. So that is going to be if it's not a new hotspot, then it's complete. If it is a new hotspot, then it's not going to be complete until the user finishes. Now, if we're going to allow double click, what we also need some event event count makes 0 sense. I think this makes a lot of sense. And up here, you're going to be able to select a hotspot of hotspots. Hotspot. In it with some image page content. That's going to be private set. Well, actually, probably map this. So that could do selected hotspot. Private set. Select. Yeah. So we're going to need to put modifiers on here. Are we? Yeah, because I don't know whether to select a select. Have our down event, up event, event. These are all going to be. We have to do this on the collection, and the collection is going to handle. Actually deselect. We also want private set var highlighted hotspot, because when you hover over, we want to actually highlight one. And if we're just passing the moved event, we can pass the moved event in, and if the moved event is over a hotspot, we can make that the highlighted one. If it isn't, then we get rid of the highlighted hotspot. And all of these are going to be potentially observable. May end up making this an objective C. Like all of these objective. Oh, yeah, if you make it an Objective-C protocol, you should be able to observe that. If not, we can use combine. Either works. And even if it's using KVO, we're using combine anyway, so yeah, the view will hold on to a hotspot collection. It will pass the various events to here. This will determine, am I doing some things here, passing it to a particular hotspot, am I creating a new hotspot or whatever, and then it will pass the events over, which each of these will be able to actually handle all this. So what we will probably be doing over the next few streams is actually building this up. And what's going to be interesting about all of this is I am not going to write the view until after all this is implemented. Instead, to prove that all this works, I am going to power it with unit tests. So what we're going to actually do is build all of this out in unit tests. And the reason we do this is the same reason I've done all this here. I have my canvas layout engine here, which is of protocol layout engine. So here I have all of my protocols. So I have a protocol for the layout engine that these can all use. All these protocols for a canvas mouse event or canvas key event. By doing all these in protocols, what this means is that I have a canvas layout engine which is completely abstracted away. I mean, you can see it's importing Coco, but I actually failed. This is probably going to fail because of these. Well, let's just comment these out for a second so it will build. That. Build now. Yes. But in theory, I may be able to just change that to what foundation. Build fully. Yes. So this class here is handling all of the actual layout stuff for the canvas. So when you are selecting something, when you're resizing something, when you're dragging something around, when you're starting to edit something, laying out the arrows and all stuff like that is ultimately handled by the canvas layout engine. And this is completely abstracted from AppKit. So this is old stuff. Now, the actual canvas view controller and the editor and stuff still does a lot of stuff because it actually takes all the view information and passes that down to the canvas layout engine and then passes it back up to the view so that it can display it. But this is handling most of the work, and this has two benefits. One, all of this is unit tested. It has a full yeah. So canvas layout engine, 95.3% code coverage. So I have lots of unit tests covering this. It also means that it is abstracted away from any sort of UI layer. So if in future I wanted to use Swift UI, it makes it easier because a lot of this code is completely independent. If I want to use UIKit, it makes it a lot more independent. Or if, as I have already done, I want to, rather than have all this information be loaded in from the data model, put into the canvas layout engine and displayed as NS views, I want to actually draw it to an NS image for use in Quick Look, I can do, and I have done. So I can actually just reuse all this code and output in various different ways. I could, in theory, take that information and output, like create something that outputs it to HTML. I'll create something that outputs it to an image to be printed, or any other numerous ways that I could output it. So it's a very good approach to take, and I think it's going to work well for all the hotspot stuff as well, because this is probably the most complex thing that I have added and that I have had to build since building the entire canvas system for the first version of Coppice. So we are now past 5 PM in the UK, so we have reached the end of the stream. So I think we will leave it there. We will come back to this on Friday at 2 PM, where we will start actually doing some proper implementation of this. And we'll build this entire system out using unit tests to guide us along the way. And in theory, we should end up with something that, at least in theory, does not have to depend on the UI and depend on AppKit. It does because of an Bezier path, but we couldn't abstract that later on. It doesn't have to require on NS event or anything like that, but it will handle all the events. So we will pick that up on Friday. So until then, I hope you all have a wonderful week. I hope you all get a lot done during the week, and I will see you all then. Happy coding!